Hello, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on wherever you happen to be in the world. My name is Michael Fox, and I am a member of the Literacy Committee of the Rotary Club of Stratford in Ontario, Canada, in Rotary District 6330, which is a rare international district straddling the Canada-US border between Ontario and the great state of Michigan. So a big shout out to our American friends and fellow Rotarians south of the border. As those of you who have participated in the contest before will recall, this is the fifth year that the Rotary Club of Stratford has hosted this contest. And while it has always been fun, it hasn't always been easy. In year two, for instance, we had a breach of our internet security system, necessitating a change in the way stories are submitted, uploading them from your end to be downloaded at ours, rather than emailing them to us directly. And now, for the past 2 years, we've been working our way through a global pandemic, which has necessitated more changes in the way we do things. For example, the awards presentation used to happen at a live event in the third week in October each year as part of the Stratford Writers Festival, and it featured celebrated authors doing open forums, discussing their work and careers, and availing themselves to our contestants and guests for Q&A sessions. The announcement of the winning stories and honorable mentions, including acclaimed professional actors from the renowned Stratford Festival doing dramatic readings of the first, second, and third prize-winning stories. And finally, the presentation of the certificates and cash prizes to our winners, followed by light refreshments and socializing. Unfortunately, this new world we find ourselves in makes that sort of thing out of the question, for the time being at least. So this year, we thought we would try to replicate the celebration of the work of our winning contestants online. The upside of which is that whereas in the past, our end of contest event was only accessible to those within close geographical proximity to Stratford, this event, however, is available to be seen at least to writers everywhere, wherever you are in the world. You just don't get the sandwiches. Yet another of the harsh realities of a global pandemic. Before we start, however, I would just like to call upon fellow Rotarian Catherine Hahn to say a few words, partially because Catherine was our club president when the 2021 contest was launched, but also because she will soon be stepping up into the esteemed position of Governor of Rotary International District 6330. Catherine Hahn.
Hi, I'm Catherine Hahn. I'll be governor for District 6330 in 2024. I'm also a proud member of the Rotary Club of Stratford. Today, I'd like to talk to you about Rotary's commitment to supporting literacy. Did you know that worldwide, more than 775 million people over the age of 15 are illiterate? That's 17% of the world's adult population. You know, supporting education has been an important focus of Rotary International for decades. In 1930, Ray Wilbur, the United States Secretary of the Interior, asked Rotary to take an active leadership role in the reduction of illiteracy. We stepped up, and we've been actively engaged ever since. Our goal is to strengthen the capacity of communities to support basic education and literacy, reduce gender disparity in education, and increase adult literacy. Rotary believes knowing how to read and write increases a person's earning potential and the ability to build a better life. Members have supported thousands of projects to improve basic education and literacy. Our Rotary Club of Stratford's short story contest is an example of a way for us to encourage and foster literacy in our communities. As we celebrate decades of commitment to support this basic human right, we look towards the future and focus on how we can address current challenges and look for innovative solutions to further boost literacy around the world. When you teach someone how to read, they have that for a lifetime. It ripples through the community one by one.
Thanks, Catherine. The single biggest challenge that contests of this nature face all the time is picking 3 winners out of so many wonderful submissions. Our 2 honorable mentions for the 2021 contest are The Many Benefits of Masks by Lydia C. Lee, a charming but powerful and timely story set in World War II, Devon, about a young woman trying to make her way in a world that seemed to have no place for young women in it, and A Terrible Thing Has Happened by Natasha Graham, who describes the story as being inspired by the children who found Virginia Woolf's body in the River Ouse in 1941 during World War II. The title, A Terrible Thing Has Happened, is taken from the letter Leonard Woolf, Virginia Woolf's husband, wrote after her suicide. I encourage you to check these stories out. They're posted here on our website. All right, on to the readings of our three prize-winning stories. First up, third place, with a cash prize of $100, The Candle in the Window by Grace Hanslick. Grace tells us a bit about herself, saying, I started writing in middle school. I live in Northwest Indiana, and I won my first poetry contest with a poem I wrote in the 6th grade and got to go to Reno, Nevada for a convention. I'm not sure I would have associated a poetry convention with Reno, Nevada, but there it is. It was through the Famous Poets Society. They've published several poems, my poems since then. I write everything from poetry to children's books and young adult fiction. Candle in the Window was written for this short story. Thank you, Grace. We're honored. In my childhood home, we had a large picture window in the living room. Every Christmas, my mom would put a candle in the window. She said it was something people used to do to let travelers know that they could come there. Using that, I made up the story about the summer solstice, as that was what was happening when I wrote it. That's interesting because when I was reading the story, it somehow managed to feel like a Christmas story. Well, let's take a look and see if we feel the same way. The Candle in the Window by Grace Hanslick. Benji ran through the tired wooden house excitedly, his tiny hands grasping a long yellowish candlestick. It wasn't just any candlestick, it was a Pickerson family heirloom. Tonight, the night of the summer solstice, it would light up one of the old house's windows. Can I pick the window, Mummy? Benji asked, shooting glances at the 3 large single-paned windows in the living room. Sure, darling, came Margaret's, aka Mummy's, soft reply, but you must wait for the guests to arrive before we can light it. Your Uncle George, Aunt Leanne, and grandparents will be here just before supper. Benji ran off with the antique candle. Margaret looked to her husband, Sean, for help with the preparations. It was his family's tradition to get together every year on the summer solstice and light a candle in the window. At first, she had thought the tradition was silly, more of a reason to get together than anything else. Eventually, however, she discovered that it was as much of a holiday to them as Christmas or Thanksgiving. You know, it's an exciting thing, Marge, Sean said in his fatherly voice that made him sound more proud than excited. Dad and I talked last night, and we're going to let Benji light the candle this year. Yes, Benji will be so excited. He doesn't know yet, does he? No, we'll tell him when the time comes. Just like Dad did for Leanne and I. I think I was about 7 when he let me light it. Leanne got it the next year. It really made us feel big back then, you know. After all, lighting the beacon of God is no small matter. Will you let him pray too? No, Dad will pray. Just then the doorbell rang, quickly followed by Benji's rushed steps coming down the hall to the door. Grandma and Grandpa stood on the porch, one holding a small bouquet of flowers and the other a dish of food. Smiles lit up their aged faces as they greeted Benji and his parents. Benji, Grandpa began once they were all inside and settled. Are you ready for tonight? Are you ready to welcome the weary traveler? Yes, Grampy, said Benji as Marge turned with a startled look. Weary traveler? You mean God, right? She questioned. No. Although some say that the weary traveler was God. Don't you know the story of the light in the window? Grandpa replied. Of course she does, Sean butted in with a humorous tone in his voice. We light the candle in the window every summer solstice as a beacon of God's light to the world, and a reminder that even though the days grow shorter, his light does not dwindle. Tell him, honey. Benji's confused face mirrored his mum's as they looked from Sean to his father and back again. After a moment of baffled silence, Grandpa forced a chuckle and continued with his version of the old tradition. On the summer solstice, the window to the other world, the place where evil things live, is open the longest. Like in a blizzard, it's easy to get lost among the evil things and temptations. A long time ago, your great great grandmother had a candle in the window on such a day. A traveler, very worn and tired, came to her house and asked for some bread and water and a place to lay his head. She gave that to him, and while he ate and drank, she talked to him about his travels. He'd been through a lot and found himself without a home or family. He'd seen your grandma's candle and was drawn to it. For the first time in many weeks, he found peace. Her company refreshed his spirit. So every year, in honor of this, we light the candle in the window to welcome the weary traveler and provide peace to his troubled soul. Well, Marge began, I thought it was just to ward off the evil spirits that roam about on this day, kind of like dressing up for Halloween. Before anyone could respond, the doorbell announced another arrival. George and Leanne, the most oxymoronic looking couple you could ever meet, stood in the doorway, bathed in the golden light of a barely setting sun. George was boisterous in both size and personality, whereas Leanne was the impersonation of a mouse. He was olive-skinned with dark-colored hair, while she had very fair skin and blonde, almost white hair. Despite their differences, the couple was wonderful together. She cooked the most delicious dishes, one of which was carried in her hands, and he was a fine craftsman. He carried with him a small wooden statue of a man and woman holding hands. Upon entering, it was given to Sean, who placed it next to the candle, now sitting in the middle of the largest living room window. Happy solstice to you, boomed George's deep voice. He always came filled with joy and an almost childlike excitement, matched only by Benji. And to you, came a nearly synchronized reply. It was dulled, however, by the still confused look on their faces, which did not go unnoticed by the newly arrived couple. What's going on? Asked Leanne quietly, although perhaps loud for her. All at once, everyone answered, claiming the others didn't know why the candle was lit in the window each summer solstice. Finally, one voice struck out above the others. Okay, George said. I'll settle this. Here's what happened. One year, on the summer solstice, an old man came to Leanne's great grandma's door. He was a wise old man, known everywhere for his ability to see what others could not. He told Grandma that the world would soon grow dark and the evil spirits would try to take over her. He said that she could be a beacon in the night by lighting a candle to ward off the spirits every summer solstice. He warned her to keep her loved ones near on this night so that the evil spirits would not take them away. So she did as he said. The wise man stayed with her that first solstice and ate and drank and slept in her home. The next morning, he was gone. She never saw him again. Oh, honey. Leanne's laughter was the first to break the silence. You got it all wrong. If I told you once, I told you 100 times, there was no wise man. The traveler was a half-dead young man, barely 25. My great-grandma took pity on him when she saw him sitting alone on the side of the road as the sun began to set. In her town, she had to light a candle in the window for the doctor, whom she had sent for when she found the boy. The boy was very ill, but lived, thanks to Grandma, and of course, the candle in the window. The doctor gave him some medicine, and he was able to leave her home a few days later. They were friends for a long time after that. We don't light a Candle for a doctor? Where in the world did you hear that story? Sean asked in disbelief. It was God. He healed the boy, if there was one. The candle is lit to ward off the evil spirits. It acts as a beacon of light in the growing darkness. Sure, great grandma helped lots of people, but the candle has nothing to do with it. She wanted her home to be free of evil. So we light the candle every year to make it so. Well, arguing ensued, jumbling stories even further. It was obvious that no one knew the true origins of the candle in the window. No one except Grandma, who until this very moment had been completely silent. Hush now, children, Grandma said in a voice so calm and quiet that it caught everyone's ear. My grandma was a very superstitious lady. She was kind and generous and faithful throughout her life. But that is not why we light the candle. This is a story of love. Grandma was a lonely young woman. She did not like the men available to her, as they did not seem to share her values. It is well known that evil haunts the summer solstice. Grandma spent many of them in the church, praying and seeking God. One summer, however, the sky grew dark and stormy long before the sun was to set. She was not able to go to church. Instead, she lit a candle, which was easily seen through the window, and read her Bible through the night. At some point, a young man saw the candle and came to her door. He was drenched and cold. Being the kind soul that she was, Grandma fed and clothed him. While they talked and ate, she found that she liked the young man. Perhaps she even loved him. He told her that the light from her candle was the only thing he could see in the dark and stormy night. Over the next few days, Grandma fell deeply in love with the young man. One day, however, he woke up and he was gone. He left a note telling her that he had gone to town but would return shortly. He never did. He was killed, robbed along the side of the road. Every year, she lit the candle in the window in the hopes that his soul would find its way back to her. No, 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 Grandpa started. That was never the story told to me. I've never heard such a thing. His rebuttal was joined by that of the rest of the family. Each person tried to convince the others of the validity of their story. Someone quoted research, someone else went on and on about letters or sightings or other unprovable yet somehow undeniable proof that their reason for the candle was indeed the true reason. Meanwhile, Benji stared in amazement at the oddly unruly behavior of his usually calm family. Why the candle was lit every summer solstice had never truly been explained to the little boy. Now, hearing so many stories, he couldn't decide which one he liked best, nor did he particularly care. To him, the candle in the window meant that his family got together and had fun for a night. It meant that they were doing something special together. The why never occurred to him to be important. What happened to Grandma all those years ago didn't matter nearly as much as what happened to his family now. In his 5-year-old mind, Benji could not understand why any of the stories had to be true or false, or reasons more or less acceptable than the other. I know why, he said, and then repeated until the arguing stopped. It was all of it. It was because great-great-grandma wanted all of us to get together at least once every year. It is because of love and God and helping others. It doesn't matter who is right or wrong or what really happened on the solstice so many years ago. What matters is what's happening now. So, can we light the candle in the window now? Sean smiled proudly and stated his agreement with his young son. Everyone followed, and Benji lit the candle while Grandpa prayed, this time for everyone's reason for the tradition. From beyond the grave, great-great-grandma looked at Benji and smiled. Only she knew that the tradition started simply because she enjoyed candles and liked having the family together to watch the sunset on the longest day of the year. The Candle in the Window by Grace Hanslick. The presentation of our second place prize winner this year, I think, requires some full disclosure. Those of you who have participated in the contest before may recall that our 2019 first place prize winner in the adult category was Renee Lennon for her story, What Goes Around Comes Around. The same Renee Lennon whose story, Nightfall in Cell Block C, we're about to hear now. I would like to stress at this point that the reason we state in our contest rules that the author's name must not appear anywhere on the story is so that our readers and judges never know whose story they're reading and adjudicating until they've submitted their scores. In 2019, COVID-19 broke only 2 months after we had launched the contest, which significantly reduced the number of submissions we received, especially in the youth category due to school closures, down to a total, including both categories, of only 80 submissions or so. This year, conversely, and for a number of largely unrelated reasons, we received over 700 submissions, and yet Ms. Lennon's found herself in the winner's circle again. And to further complicate the situation, Renee Lennon lives and works right here in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, which makes the optics of this situation seriously suboptimal. But I reiterate, at no point did any of our readers, and they read all the submissions, nor our judges who read the shortlisted selections, and some of whom also serve as readers, at no point during the scoring did any of them know whose story they were reading. It is simply a testament to this writer's talent. All right, so who is this twice decorated local talent? Well, it says here, Renee Lennon is a registered nurse who lives and works in Stratford, Ontario. She started writing as an empty nester and she enjoys exploring all genres. In her spare time, Renee also enjoys outdoor sports, painting, and torturing an old piano. Well, from my experience, old pianos have got it coming. Nightfall in Cell Block C is a heavily edited version of a chapter in an as yet unpublished novel that I wrote last year. During the lockdowns, I found myself thinking of prison and how we try to make sense of and adapt to changes beyond our control. And the story coalesced around those themes. Well, let's have a listen. As the Rotary Club of Stratford's very own R.L. Reid reads Nightfall in Cell Block C by Renee Lennon.
Lillian sat cross-legged on her cot and picked at the pills on her brown blanket, wishing her interlocutor would vanish so she could order her thoughts. 2 years. It had been 2 years since she walked out of the old man's room and into, what? Jesus. If the woman would only shut up, Lillian could try to figure things out all over again. But new women often talk too much. eager to establish alliances, ease loneliness, ward off the crazy voices echoing inside their skulls. New women either talk too much or not at all. Bet you didn't think you'd get caught. Probably thought they'd chalk it up to a heart attack, right? Lillian stared at the tiny mountain of polyester fluff balls she'd created. Gotta give them credit. The cops dig and dig like starving rats in a junkyard. Don't get me wrong, I hate the cops, but credit where credit's fucking due, right? Lillian's non-committal sigh had the effect of throwing a birch log onto the conversational fire. And innocent until proven guilty, my arse. They fucking decide your fate, and they find the evidence to back the charge, irregardless of the real truth. The woman obviously wanted her to confess or deny. Most people couldn't tolerate ambiguity. Lillian offered silence. Whether you did it or not is none of my beeswax, so don't get me nothing. Don't tell me nothing if you don't want to. I get it. I seen you at dinner. You're not a gabber. Lillian returned to her task. Me, talking's therapy. Not talking to the fucking head shrinker, but friends, you know. Lillian nodded politely. Since you're asking, I'm in for manslaughter. Brandy had it coming. Sniffed around my man like a bitch in heat. Tight shorts and top down to here. I ain't blaming Ryan. Men are weak. All prick and no fucking brains. I had to send a message. Gave her plenty of warning. Told her to back off. Would have been aggravated assault, but the bitch up and died. Lillian abandoned her project and looked warily at the woman sprawled on the cell's other cot. She was soft, as if she were made of pillows. Yet she'd just admitted to killing another human being. The woman was a noisy, giant Boston cream donut with violent impulse oozing from her core. The cops blamed me. The legal aid lawyer was a swinging deck who pissed off a judge, a lady judge. She hated my guts, and I didn't stand a chance. Probably had husband troubles herself that she didn't have the guts to solve. End of fucking story. Silence could provoke as surely as a clumsy word. Lillian spoke gently, as if steadying a nervous horse. And now you're here. Welcome to Grand River Women's Penitentiary. Welcome, the woman brayed. You the fucking bellhop at the Hilton? Lillian laughed along defensively. Thanks anyway. The woman yawned and stretched. First day is always fucking long. I'm going to sleep. She rolled over and faced the wall. Good night, said Lillian. Seconds later, the guard shut off the lights. It occurred to Lillian that no one had introduced the woman and they hadn't exchanged names. She brushed her fabric mountain away and laid back to savor the darkness. Names were for tomorrow. Now she had silence. At night, silence flooded this small room and her small life. Silence was infinitely more than an auditory void. It was a black canvas with no edges, a horizon, a bottomless vessel. She had to think carefully, or the silence filled with intruders and ugliness, monsters materializing from nowhere and attacking the order of her mind. On good nights, she sank into the silence and weighed and assorted and boxed her memories and felt better for it. A system of thousands of moving parts and little minds had put her here. Nothing personal. No good deed goes unpunished. The greatest of deeds is punished in spectacular fashion. She hadn't had a choice. She'd done what her father had asked of her. He had a stroke. His arms and legs stopped working. He breathed like a guppy out of water, and he begged to die. The doctors decided he was cognitively incapable and ineligible for a medically assisted death. He was as dependent as a baby sparrow, and no one else would help him. So she helped him. She crushed the digoxin tablets, mixed them in pudding, and spooned the bitter sludge into his mouth. Lillian wasn't happy with the outcome. Conviction for second-degree murder with a mandatory decade in prison. But at least she wasn't a coward. This particular monster, the do-over monster, was easy to dispatch. Less so her self-pity. Self-pity was a monster of another color entirely. Cut it here and it grew there. It changed shape and face and never, ever went away. You had to starve it if you ever hoped to kill it. Hers was unbridled, uncontained, and amply fed by petty nuisances and outrageous injustices. Cold showers, slimy meatballs, library books with missing pages, the crushing uncertainty of the appeal process. Jessie. Betrayal had a name, and it was Jessie Conlin. Lillian played the Jessie film reel backward and forward in her mind in an infinite loop, emotions shifting with each memory. Jessie stated the facts simply in a brief phone call. He was helping Sophie and her 2 children now. He had no time to write or call or visit. Sophie needed him. Sophie's kids needed him. The Thistledown Community Center needed him. Duke, the Alsatian neurotic and cranky in his new crowded home, needed him. With so much need and so little time, Jessie had nothing left to give to Lillian, and he wanted nothing more from Lillian. I guess this is goodbye then, Lillian said before she hung up for the last time. She hid her hurt from the predators, licked her wounds under the cloak of night, and tried to figure out why, when she'd been so confident in their promises to each other, Jessie abandoned her. Lillian developed and discarded theories based on her own unworthiness, Jessie's fear, vulnerability, and his need to be needed, and Sophie's obvious advantages, chiefly her accessibility and relative youth, to explain the betrayal, but nothing quite fit. There was no logic to love and the death of love. Relationships ended every day all over the planet. Evil might be banal, but heartbreak was just as achingly common, tedious, and mundane. Experience, that most cruel of teachers, had taught Lillian that she would suffer, would tire of suffering, and eventually the film would wear out and she would heal. She still had Isaac. Naive, fatherless, and now in practical terms, motherless Isaac. She had his letters tucked in the lining of her pillow, and she read them when she was certain they wouldn't be snatched away. A tendril of love bound one generation to the next, like a vine of morning glory in a rose garden. Soon, Isaac and Amy would be parents, and they'd discover this for themselves. They'd sent her a grainy ultrasound image with the words, "Baby Lily Ann, due September 10th, scrawled under it in Isaac's hurried staccato hand. Lillian wouldn't be present to help soothe the girl when she teased, to read her picture books on the porch swing or to run as a human training wheel beside her wobbly bike. By the time Lillian would be eligible for parole, Isaac's daughter would be old enough for campfires and drive-in movies and swimming at the quarry. Her granddaughter, Lillian's Lillian, entwined in love. Some people called morning glory bindweed and maligned it as a strangler. These people were blind to the beauty of its delicate trumpet-shaped flowers and the courage of its conviction to hold on, come what may. They dismiss it as metaphorical virtues if they ever even thought of them. Lillian was certain that such people could never take refuge in the simplicity of silence and darkness either. Judith, her mommy dearest, also visited in the night, though in a diminished form. Prison seethed with women like Judith, angry, narcissistic, and dangerous. And these flesh and blood women defanged her. The maternal specter paled against actual threat. Memories of random slaps and easy criticism held nothing on the looming possibility of rib-snapping kicks and tooth-loosening punches. The ghost of Judith haunted Lillian only when she had the luxury of safety to indulge it. And prison was no fucking cocktail party at the Ritz, as one of the square-trousered, briskly hairstyled guards put it. So true. Prison was definitely not a cocktail party. It was as dry as a temperance picnic in the Gobi Desert, and Lillian was healthy and clear-headed for it. The old man would have been proud of her sobriety. Less so her hard-drinking colleagues, ex-colleagues. Not one of them had kept in contact, let alone visited. Tenure, a rubber band with plenty of give, snapped when she was prosecuted, and her dismissal from the university swiftly followed. Now Lillian was persona non grata, disgraced and banished from the faculty lounge forevermore, name expunged from directories and academic calendars, office repainted and occupied by her rival, Ken Feinberg. She imagined him surrounded by her bookshelves, odes to neoliberalism and free market freakery in place of sensible Marxist philosophy. He'd prop his feet up on her desk and laugh at his own jokes while a ponytailed grad student, arms crossed defensively over her bosom, tittered submissively as she backed out the door. Lillian tried to slay the green-eyed monster of envy by telling herself she didn't care about Ken or the others, but this was a lie. Lillian's academic career was over, and that hurt. At least pacifiers for the proletariat, the infantilizing effects of celebrity culture and professional sport, sold well enough to warrant a modest second print run with fresh cover art, a flattering introduction, and a new editor and publicist. In a handwritten letter, Philip at Merganser Press floated the idea of a memoir, now that she was infamous, if it wouldn't be too painful to write. It wouldn't. She had a lot to say about taming monsters in the silence and darkness of night. Tomorrow, she'd ask for more paper, lined if possible, and a new ballpoint pen. As she considered her answer to Philip's letter, she heard a hoarse whisper. "Lillian, you still awake?" "Yes," Lillian whispered back. "Sorry, I don't know your name yet." "Tina." "Tina," Lillian repeated. "Pleased to meet you." The woman giggled softly and in a disastrous attempt at a royal accent replied, "Enchanted, I'm fucking sure." After a moment, she asked, "Do you ever have nightmares?" "Yes, sometimes," said Lillian. "Me too. Can we make a deal?" "Yes, Tina." "If either of us gets scared in the night, when the monsters come in the dark, we can wake each other up." "Sure," agreed Lillian. "It's a deal."
Nicely done, RL. Thank you. We were very fortunate this year to have as honorary chair of the short story contest the award-winning, celebrated, and now oft-translated Canadian author Andrew Piper, who, as a matter of fact, also happens to hail from Stratford, Ontario, Canada. Excited to have him, yes, but I have a bone to pick with Andrew. A number of years ago, my wife and three other couples were driving around France, taking turns driving. And when I wasn't driving, I was reading his then recently published novel, The Trade Mission. And I became so engrossed in the trade mission that I missed France. It just sort of slid by the outside the windows of the car. I'm told it's lovely. I look forward to seeing it one day, but I'm going to have to take other people's word for it that it's a beautiful place to be, because I missed it because of Andrew Piper. So I'm happy to give you Andrew Piper, and you may keep him.
Hi, I'm Andrew Piper. I've written and published 11 novels and make my living as a storyteller, and I can tell you this still excites me. The chance to congratulate new writers who are sticking their necks out and putting their stories on the page. The leap from expressing yourself to letting others read that expression is a huge one, and not without its risks. So let me acknowledge first your bravery for having taken this on and entered your work. And also let me celebrate the winners. There's more than enough rejection and discouragement in life, let alone in literary contests. So when something you've done meets with success, I say don't hesitate to throw yourself a party. But once the party's over, I encourage you to keep going. Whether you placed first in this or didn't place at all, keep going. Take criticism, reread your work, make changes, start something new, go back to something old and see if there's something there worth pulling out and sticking into a work in progress. Become lost in writing. Keep going. Good luck and be well.
Thank you, Andrew. And I mean that. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, our first place winning story with a prize of $500. That's the good news. Canadian. It's the bad news. The Play's the Thing by Deidre Lovegren. Deidre Whit Lovegren has been making up stories, she tells us, for as long as she can remember. She's taught scores of English and writing classes to students from preschool to college, both in elite private and rural public schools. She wins a writing contest every blue moon. I think she's being modest, and juggles a few novels that may never see the light of day. Modesty again, I think. Deidre also co-hosts the podcast Read Lots, Write Lots, interviewing burgeoning writers around the world about their craft. So without further ado, it is my privilege to read for you The Play's the Thing by Deidre Lovegren. It is ungodly hot, and Hamlet should shut up. You cannot call it love, for at your age, the heyday in the blood is tame. It's humble and waits upon the judgment. Good God. And as if the pentameter bashing weren't enough, he over-enunciates while wildly gesticulating with a plastic human skull. The skull doesn't only appear until Act 5, and Hamlet certainly is not waving it at his mother while lecturing her on how to control her sexual desires. The community theater auditions are going poorly. Next, you may want to pay close attention to this next one, warns Bob, handing me another acting resume. It's so human inside the moldy theater that the paper curls. Bob and I are old friends, finding ourselves surprisingly single at 60. What? How he convinces me to help him stage Hamlet in the middle of the hottest July on record chiefly results from my utter boredom. Retirement isn't turning out to be what I expected. It's stupefying, because there are only so many crossword puzzles one can do. And sorry, why am I looking at this actress more closely than the others? It says here she's almost 50 years old, Bob, and she's auditioning for Ophelia. She owns 5 KFC franchises, Bob states flatly. So Ophelia is going to drown in hydrogenated soybean oil. She can finance a large part of this operation. The city only contributed so much, and I'm no good at fundraising. Do you want to try to shake down some car dealerships to support the arts? I concede and peruse her resume more thoroughly. See. Come on, Bob. She played Annie in her 40s. It's a half-lived life for us. Are you sure this KFC Queen is right for the production? How about we start a GoFundMe page instead? How about you look at our mature Ophelia, Bob pleads. Fine, I sulk. I hear her footsteps before I see her. These are not the footsteps of a tentative, poor little Ophelia, but long, purposeful strides of a king of Denmark. She's tall, with unruly hair, dark brown eyes, ferociously gazing up at Bob and me as if we were auditioning for her. I have rehearsed Act 3, Scene 1, immediately after for Hamlet's fourth soliloquy, she states boldly. Fourth, I'm flipping through papers for no reason. She's gorgeous. After to be or not to be, she waits for us, suffering fools gladly. I will need one of you to read Hamlet's part. I'll do it. I immediately volunteer while sweat pools under my armpits, and I will kill Bob if he offers otherwise. I want her to talk with me. Ready? She inquires with an arched eyebrow. Oh, that I might kiss that eyebrow. I am absolutely ready. I almost choke on my own unintentional irony. Bob audibly snickers, and I hate him for knowing me so well. She pauses, collecting all the kinetic energy in the auditorium. My lord, I have love tokens of yours to return to you. I pray you now, receive them. She laments, suddenly a broken-hearted young maiden. Her transformation blinds me. I literally cannot find my place on the script. Bob is threatening to laugh uproariously at my besotted state, but gratefully he controls himself enough to point out my line. No, not I. I never gave you anything. I half stand, calling out to her from behind a table in the audience. My honored lord, you know right well you did. And with them, words of so sweet breath composed as made the things more rich. She eloquently articulates each luxurious syllable. I sit down because I don't trust my knees anymore. Are you virtuous? I reply. Please say no, my lord. Are you fair? My God, you are so fair. She grows more beautiful the longer I look at her. I cannot stop looking at her. What means, your lordship? That if you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty. I did love you once, I proclaim, probably more ardently than the script calls for. Bob looks over at me pointedly. I kick him under the table. Indeed, my lord, you made me believe so. Ophelia is all vulnerability now, eyes wider than one can imagine, exposing the depths of her trusting soul to the love of her life. Due to the heat, her eyeliner is smudged, giving her a heartbreakingly desperate look. The next lines are cruel, and I read them poorly because they are not true. You should not have believed me. I loved you not. Broken, the actress appears as if physically in pain. In a quiet, dejected voice, she simply says, I was the more deceived. I want to run out of the stage and comfort her, but instead, as Hamlet, I rip out my own heart by uttering the words, "Get thee to a nunnery." Bob stands to applaud while she formally bows, smiling from ear to ear. As she gathers her things, I'm paralyzed, not trusting my voice or my body language to give away the fact that I'm hopelessly in love with a 50-year-old Ophelia who sells fried chicken. To my delight and disbelief, she makes her way up the aisle towards us. "So, how the audition is coming along?" she fishes. "Very good, lots of talent in this town," Bob offers in his genial, non-committal way. "Well, not that much talent," I add lamely. "But not you, though. You were excellent. What I mean is that you definitely have talent. You are talented." "Kill me." She looks at us both skeptically. "Well, let me know at your earliest convenience. If I get the part, I'll have to hire another store manager or two." She turns on her heels to leave, but not before flashing a dazzling smile. "They say the owl was a baker's daughter," I shout, one of Ophelia's nonsensical ramblings after her, just to get her to stay a bit longer. "We know what we are, but we know not what we may be," she replies, and my heart nearly bursts. After the auditions, Bob and I walk out into the early evening air, still stifling hot, causing beads of sweat to trickle down our faces. "I think we have a solid final cast list," he says tiredly, as he dabs his face with his tie. "Hamlet is a little weak," I caution him, "but it would be hard to find an equal to Ophelia's commanding stage presence and her eyes." "Do you want to grab dinner?" he asks. "No, I have other plans." I smile at Bob. "Are these plans original or extra crispy?" I place my hands over my heart. "Do not take tenders for true pay which are not sterling. Tender yourself more dearly." "That's what you're going with? Chicken tender puns?" Bob rolls his eyes. "You'll tender me a fool," I say, blowing Bob a stage kiss. And then I do what Hamlet should have done. I walk to my car, determined to find the fair Ophelia at one of 5 KFC restaurants. The Play's the Thing by Deidre Lovegren. Well, that, as they say, is that. Before we go, I just want to extend my personal thanks to our judges, and in particular, our egregiously overworked readers, for going to the walls so heroically and reading over 700 stories, when I had told them that we were really hoping to attract around 100 submissions this year. My bad. We'll post a proper thank you on our website in the coming days, and special thanks to 2 fellow Rotarians without whom this contest simply would never have happened this year. And I would be in a convalescent home somewhere, drooling and muttering to myself. Our club tech director, Dan Kane, who worked his magic and put this whole Franken show together. And a new Rotarian, social media wizard, and indefatigable workhorse, Jennifer Nickel. And finally, thank you for participating and joining us for this celebration of all the wonderful stories we received this year from all over the world. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. We wish you peace, love, and the happiest of holiday seasons, and a prosperous and healthy new year. And we look forward to doing it all over again in 2022.